Okay, so yeah, welcome, Leanna, to Gamecool Books um, for a conversation about The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. Um, could you just kind of start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you first maybe came across the book, and then more importantly, I think, how you got involved with the fandom and the wiki pages and kind of what your role is on there, because that's how we got connected.
Yeah, so hi, thanks so much for having me. Um, so my first introduction to the Golden Compass was actually through the movie when I was younger. So right now I'm 22. I probably watched the movie when it first came out, or maybe around 2010 or so, and I thought it was a really great movie. And I didn't know that it was connected to a series of books at the time. So I was very interested in it. I know that it left off on a cliffhanger. So I was like expecting a new movie. Of course, we all know how that worked out. Um, so I ended up looking into it a little bit more, found the book series. Um, so when I was around 13, 14 is when I started reading them, went through them all, was such a huge fan of them. That saying, don't judge a book by its movie,
Right.
definitely came true because I realized the movie was actually not as great as I thought it was when
Oh,
compared to the book, because it left out so much. But after that, so I actually got introduced to the fandom side of things when I started role playing, which in this case is like when two people online are writing a story, sometimes based in a fandom. So I did a lot of that when I was younger, and I wanted to try it with his Dark Materials. So a lot of the time when I'm role playing, I like to bring in a lot of information from the books that is accurate. So when I was looking up information, rather than having to go through the books and check every fact that I had, I just kind of Googled it and found the His Dark Materials wiki, which I heard of Wikipedia before, but I never knew that there were like specific wikis for certain fandoms.
yeah.
And so that's how I was introduced to Wikia at the time, which is now known as Fandom.
Ah,
And so I started exploring it and I thought it was really cool. There's like ones for Harry Potter, there's all different ones that go into such great depth about different aspects of the series. Like you can find currently there's about 900 pages
ooh,
on the characters, the places, the books, all with references so that all the information there is as accurate as it can be. It is a something that anyone can edit just like Wikipedia. So of course there might be some mix-ups, but that's what the referencing is for. That's how I was first introduced to it. So around 2012, I joined the wiki as a user called Linalia Row.
hmm,
And at that time, I just started editing a lot, adding information. I thought it was really cool that we could composite all of this information about the series into this wiki, essentially. And of course, there was a lot of editors with me who were just like contributing information. And in this case, the wiki was specifically like for facts rather than introducing opinions.
right.
But so I eventually worked my way up to adminship because I was one of the most active users. And I actually ended up taking a break from it because I had school to focus on in college.
Yeah.
And I just recently rejoined as the username musical33, which in Leet speak would be musically.
Oh, okay.
And so I regained my adminship through a lot of editing rather than just saying, oh, I used to be an admin. I just decided to edit a bunch,
Yeah.
regain my adminship. And so currently I'm a bureaucrat, which is somebody who's a step above an admin who can appoint other admins or take away adminship.
Right.
That's my current role in the fandom. Um, so my role there is to basically monitor, make sure that there's no vandalism going on,
Mhm.
try to check the accuracy of all the edits that are happening, try to bring attention to it, especially. And one great thing actually is that fandom has been introducing a discussions part of the wiki so that we can actually start talking with other people about our opinions on the books rather than just adding factual information, which
Yeah,
I think is really great.
I sorry, I agree. I mean, um, the the wiki seems like a really awesome resource. I think I found it because I was looking for a chronology of the books, and
Hmm.
I actually still haven't. I mean, I haven't really explored it all that much, but I haven't found a real um, kind of established chronology. It seems pretty loose. So I'm curious if you have thoughts about that, but also just in general about the fan community on there. I'm curious how much editing you need to do, like how often you have to correct errors or deal with any kind of vandalism or anything, how often people, have problems with each other and you have to kind of step in. Like, how much work is that? Is it generally pretty polite or do people get, nasty?
Um, for this fandom website in particular, I've not had any nasty people or users that are on here. There's not a lot of vandalism. It's like maybe a couple a month that like
Wow.
users will just blank out a page maybe or something like that, but like easily reverted
Mhm.
and pretty easy to maintain at the moment. But right now, our top struggle right now is actually getting more users because the wiki itself is, as I mentioned, mainly a factual place and not much of a discussions place. So the fact that they've introduced this discussions area was actually to up the readership and the usership. And it's worked in like big Harry Potter, for example, fandom websites.
Mm.
But for his Dark Materials, right now we have about like 6 active users,
Wow.
and that's not as many as I'd like to see, of course, but it's more than, more obscure things.
Right.
And I mean, with this discussions feature, I've actually seen a lot of people on there. Like we've gotten like 3 new users on just from the discussions feature and not even editing the wiki itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting, like especially with the whole BBC TV series and the newest Book of Dust that's coming out, The Secret Commonwealth,
Yeah.
which is going to be really exciting. Actually, we have what's called a WAM score, which tells us how active our community is in comparison to others. And
Hmm.
our WAM score spiked when it was announced that The Secret Commonwealth is going to be released on October 3rd. Like it
Nice.
spiked by 20 points, which is quite a lot. So there was a lot of readers, and that week.
Yeah, that's I mean, I think I probably count as one of those people who contributed to that because I read these books when they first came out. I guess I was in middle school probably. And I've reread them over the years from time to time, but I really kind of got back into them with this project, trying to kind of do a close reading and analysis of a lot of, Pullman's sources and a lot of kind of internal connections within the books, things that he seems to do as an author that are interesting for whatever reason. And so I've been starting to kind of look around out there to see, who else has already done some stuff like this. The gathering of so many facts and sort of points of data is really useful, just as a starting point, I think, to kind of delve into the books. So I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad that more people are starting to come to it. It's really interesting that you first heard about his Dark Materials through the film, The Golden Compass, and I mean I thought that was a pretty good movie too. Like I remember going to see it when it came out, and liking it, well enough. Even though I knew the story as it was in the book, I knew it wasn't the same story, right? It's leaving out a lot of stuff, of course, but as a film, it's still pretty good, I think. Like I don't know, so for that reason, I'm also very optimistic, very excited about the new BBC series coming out. It looks like it's going to be really cool, and I think it'll bring a lot more, maybe potentially a lot more new people, but also maybe just kind of reinvigorate some of the people who have read the books and drifted away from it. Um, so just to go along with that, though, what are some of the things that get discussed the most, or that get, added to or edited the most on there? What does it seem that people are most interested in? Those who are interested in the Golden Compass and the other books in the series.
Um, so actually, right now, with our editors that are currently active, we've been actually adding a lot of pages to the wiki on more obscure things, just so that we can up our page count because, like, even obscure things like Smith and Strange Limited, that's a book publishing company that's mentioned in his Dark Materials. And it
Ah,
has the page itself on the wiki lists all the published books that have been mentioned. And I mean, it's not important to some people, but like it's a very interesting fact. Like if you were, like in my case, if I was writing a story based in this fandom, I could mention it and it'd be canonical according to Philip Pullman. So right now, probably the most edited things are our most popular pages like Lyra, Marissa Coulter, Matt
mm.
Costa, Lee Scoresby, like the top ones. And of course, right now, the TV series page is one of the most edited pages recently,
Ah.
just because there's so much more information coming out as the days tick by, hoping that we'll get a release date.
Right. I know, yeah. And um, I don't follow a lot of the news as it comes out so much, so it's really helpful that it's sort of gathered and curated in this way on the wiki. I I did try following Twitter Ghasts, right, on
Mhm.
Twitter. They seem to
Mhm.
like get a lot of news pretty quickly. Are there other fan communities out there that you know about that are active, or is it sort of like pretty much just the because I know there used to be the Bridge to the Stars.
Oh yeah, that's
That,
that's exactly what I was about to mention too.
yeah, but it seems to
Um,
have kind of gone away. I don't think
mhm.
there's a lot of activity on there.
Yeah, I don't know of any super active His Dark Materials fan sites, which is why I've been working on the fandom one just because like I want it to be one of those ones that gets a lot of attention. Like for example, the Harry Potter wiki, they've actually had the opportunity to interview Fantastic Beasts cast members because of the
Right.
popularity of the site. And like if our His Dark Materials wiki got that kind of attention, it'd be so amazing to be able to um, give the fans more insight into, for example, the BBC TV series or the upcoming Secret Commonwealth book. So I definitely think that this wiki could be one of those huge ones just because of the amount of information it's gathered. Ooh, sorry about that.
It's okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I've heard about that too, from talking to some people who are kind of like, who study the way that movies get made out of books and like the
Hmm.
ways that fan communities are involved in that nowadays. Maggie Park, one of the professors at Signum University, studies that a good bit, and she was describing how like, yeah, they want to, you know, interact with fans and kind of give them sneak peeks and make them feel involved in the process because there's such a huge part of the success or failure of the film or whatever kind of project is that fan involvement and engagement. So I think that's a really great goal. Like that would be so cool to get to go on set or just kind of get behind the scenes a little bit of the new miniseries. Or like when I was a kid, I forget how old I was, but I actually got to meet Philip Pullman when he was on a book tour. It was when the Shadow of the North, no, sorry, Once Upon a Time in the North
Hmm.
came
Hmm.
out. His little blue book, right?
Hmm.
And he was doing a little reading at this bookstore in Virginia. So my friend and I drove down there and had him sign books, and that was I mean, such an awesome experience. That's one of the like that's one of the times I've been most excited in my life probably was when I was like in the same room as Philip Pullman
Yeah, of
at Gabriel.
course. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, so that makes me feel like that sort of feeling of being a fan is so important. and to feel like you're kind of involved in this process. And I just wanted to come back to what you said also about the role playing and the fan fiction and that sort of thing. How do you kind of get into that? And is there much I don't know of a community around that? Where do you find that sort of thing? Like who's involved in that?
Um, so actually, my I've been role playing since I was like 10 years old, just because I love writing so much. If I could have, I would have majored in English, probably written a book by now, but I just never found the time.
Sure.
But so what I have been using all these years is I was a big Harry Potter fan. So I found a website called Hogwarts Extreme, and the URL itself is Hex RPG. And when I found it, it's very interactive with Harry Potter stuff, but there's a place called Roleplay Central, and it's a place where you can write stories about any fandom at all. It doesn't have to be Harry Potter related. And I thought that was really, really cool because like you can see things from like Percy Jackson, Kingdom Hearts,
Nice.
anime fandoms, anything at all. And like there's also a role playing lounge where you can talk to other users and plan out a story before you even start writing it. So like you can exchange ideas like what
Yeah.
you want to do with the story in the future and like where you want it to lead to. And then you each create your own character and basically write up a starter post and then the other person will write a reply with their character and you go back and forth building on the story. And I did that once when I finished His Dark Materials and it was like a really I thought it was really creative.
Is that
Personally,
still out there somewhere?
it is.
Oh, cool.
They save all of the role plays on the site. There's a ton of them. You can also read other people's. Like it's out there for everyone to see, everyone to read, everyone to enjoy. And they actually have a role play contest going on right now, actually.
Oh, cool. So who
So
vote?
that's how I got into it.
Is it just by like voters, or is there like some kind of judge?
The judges are the role play forum moderators
Got
and the last role play contest winner.
Oh, nice.
And then the final round is voted on by the fans of the contest who are reading along with everyone else.
That's so cool. Yeah, see, like, I think I was just a little like too old for some of this stuff to really. I would have totally gotten into writing more fan fiction and stuff. I think if I was on the internet a little younger, but like I got really into Earthbound, the Super Nintendo game, at one point, and that's kind of been my only experience with an online fan community. Um, but I did try writing some fan fiction, and I do think it's a really cool way to kind of, be creative and show some of your own ideas, but do it in a way
Hmm.
that's like respectful
Yeah,
of
of
an
course.
author who's out, right? And like maybe also something that other people are going to feel a little more interested in reading potentially because it's like, about something they already know about. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, that's all way cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
and something that I used to do is, well, personally, since I personally respect like the authors so much and their whole like fandom thing. So that's why I originally got into the wikis is to check up my facts and make sure I wasn't changing anything that the writers had originally done in their fandom. And not everyone's like that. They specifically label their roleplay as AU or alternate universe so
okay.
that they forewarn people that it's not going to be exactly to the author's specifications, but personally, like I always like to double check my facts and build upon what the authors have already created.
Yeah, like I think that there's obviously room for both approaches, right? Like,
Of
you
course.
and in some sense, I feel like everything that is, alternate universe or whatever, it's bound to draw at least something from some other story, like
Right, of course.
basically, um, especially certain authors like I guess J.R.R. Tolkien
Hmm.
or these days I guess probably J.K. Rowling is one of those that just just about everybody has read, you know, so you're going to be influenced by them. Um, I'm curious if you see similarities between Pullman and other authors, or if you see more differences, or kind of how you think about where he fits in with some of those other fandom kind of worlds that you mentioned.
Well, um, I'll tell you the one thing that drew me in about Philip Pullman was his writing style. I had never seen anything like it. Well, maybe not his writing style, but his description.
Yeah.
For example, like in I think the third chapter of the first book, he describes Lyra as a coarse and greedy little savage. And I just remember it coming into my head, and I could picture her exactly just running across the rooftops, just being a wild child. And I'd never like heard such a description and seen it so vividly in my mind. Like I could imagine it perfectly. And that's something that drew me into his writing style. And I mean, of course, I see similarities just with not necessarily his style, but his approach to drawing in readers.
Mhm.
With I don't want to compare just because I'm not a scholar and I don't have the proof to back it up, but he's one of my favorite authors for sure, up there with J.K. Rowling and Nancy Werlin. And yeah, I think he's a really great fantasy writer, and his approach with multiple universes really drew me in as well because I'd never read a book about multiple universes.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that there's something to his writing that it borrows from other sources. I mean, he talks a lot about like different poems, um, other kind of places that he gets his ideas from philosophy or religion, and all that's pretty pretty evident, I think. But this the fantasy aspect of it is, I think, what drew me in too initially. Um, like I could sense that there was something different about his writing, and I still think he's probably one of the best writers out there. But his inventiveness too, right? Like you said, you know, coming up with the idea of not just multiple universes, but like this whole process of moving from one to the other, right? And it's it's really different. I'm not a scholar either, you know, but I don't mind, you know, making the comparison with J.K. Rowling just to be a little careless. Like in her world, the Muggles and the magical folk are sort of, you know, always basically next to each other, and they just don't
Right.
realize it, right? The Muggles don't. Um, and so they're kind of in the same, you know, physical space though. And Pullman's is a little different. He's a little more kind of scientific about it, or at least that
Yeah,
seems to be where he got
yeah,
his
I
idea,
definitely
right?
see that.
Yeah, and so it's like there's this other layer to it where it's not just, you know, two worlds side by side, but potentially infinite worlds that you know could one day learn how to move between. That's the sense I get. Like at the very end of the series, don't they say something like you can learn to do this kind of traveling between the worlds if you really um, apply yourself and like and work at it. Um,
Yeah, something to that effect. I've
yeah.
been rereading the books, but I'm literally right in the last one in the
Oh,
middle,
nice.
so haven't reached that ending part yet.
Yeah,
But
the third book is the foggiest for me too,
yes.
but it's oh man, yeah, I'm gonna work through the subtle knife next, but then I'll try to read the Amber Spyglass again. Do you have a favorite out of all of Pullman's books?
Out of the His Dark Materials trilogy.
Yeah, well, particularly that one. I guess maybe even including the new ones too, though. There's, you know, I guess there's three short stories out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's including the collectors, the audio only one. And then there's also the new novel that's out, the Book of Dust, La Belle
Right.
Sauvage. So yeah, so out of all of those set in that sort of multiverse.
Honestly, I could not pick. It would definitely be in the main trilogy though,
Yeah.
just because of the amount of thought and like science and all these different aspects coming together and forming these beautiful books. Crazy enough, I actually got my first big purchase was a Folio Society edition of his
Oh,
Dark Materials.
wow.
So I have these beautifully bound editions of these books. And one thing I thought was interesting is that the fact that they changed a few things from the American version versus the European version. I don't know if you've talked about this before.
No, I don't know about this.
Yeah, the Golden Compass is actually called Northern Lights in the UK.
Oh yeah, the title. I knew the
Yeah,
title,
and there's
but what
a few
else?
passages in a few of the books that have been changed.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Substantially or just, I mean, like, oh man, I'm so curious. I wonder.
um, well, it's I think it's mainly in the amber spyglass that they were changed.
Hmm.
One of them was just a little suggestive of like puberty feelings kind of thing.
Right.
And so they took that out of the American edition.
Oh man.
And another passage was, I have it open here, was regarding the assassin in the last book that I can't remember the name of, but it regards him seeing Lyra and how she was glowing essentially
Ooh.
and such like that.
So that was cut out of the American
Yeah,
version? Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting, the censorship side of it, just because like they seem like innocent paragraphs when you look at them, but then I guess if you really read into them, they do seem a bit, I don't know, risky.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
didn't think they were worth editing out, which that's why I like looked into them and actually found the UK versions.
well, it's so cool. I know the other thing about the Folio Society editions, besides just being like beautiful, materials, they've got new illustrations, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're
Do
really
they have
pretty.
them in all of them or just the Northern Lights, the
Oh,
first?
all of them.
They all have. Oh man, that's wild. Yeah,
Mm,
I've never seen those in person, but I've seen some of the illustrations
they're
reproduced.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm jealous. You have
Yeah,
the
my
you
first
have
big purchase. They were
you have the
expensive.
yeah, and you have oh man. Well, so I do they also include Pullman's sketches that he puts in the front of each chapter?
um,
They're
yes, they do.
like they're like little etchings, like little
Yeah.
squares. They have
Hmm.
those. Oh
Yep.
man. Yeah. See, I don't think I have ever seen um except online. He's got them on his website, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's I think the role of sort of like illustration, adaptation, translations, even like the ways these get translated into other languages, or, in the case of going from one medium to another, like from the book to the film, um, all of that stuff is really interesting to me, but it's something I don't really know much about at all. So, again, that's something I'm going to be looking at mostly online, basically, like looking around on Fandom and trying to research. I speak some Spanish, so I'm curious to see what kinds of changes there are between the English and Spanish translations. And I know that the Twitagazzi people, a lot of them are French, it seems like, so they probably have some good information out there about the French language version. But just to go back to the movie, there's like you said when you read the books, you saw some of the differences there. What were some of the differences that really leapt out at you, and what are some of the things you think about now when you think back to the movie?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I definitely wanted to come back to this. So with the movie, the main thing that got to me was the magisterium
Hmm.
being well, basically the church being replaced by the magisterium.
Yeah.
I thought that was a huge, huge um, mistake. I think I would like to say because, like, after reading the whole trilogy, like religion and God and the church were huge parts of the entire trilogy, And for them to take that out, I think that's part of the reason it didn't do so well, because it left a lot of people confused. But I mean, I really did actually like the movie just because the casting was spectacular. Like, I absolutely loved Dakota Blue Richards as Lyra. She was exactly how I imagined Lyra to be. And Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman were great. I thought it was really interesting that Philip Pullman actually changed the color of Mrs. Coulter's hair just because of Nicole Kidman's performance. I don't know if you knew that. But in the
How does
original,
that, wait, how does that work? Did he go back and change it in the first book as well, or just
yeah, she originally had dark hair. So in newer editions of the book, she now has blonde hair.
that's wild.
Yeah, I thought that was really crazy. She did such a fantastic job that he himself was like, I couldn't picture Mrs. Coulter any other way. And I thought that was I mean, the casting was spectacular. I just think that the I think I actually listened to your last conversation with Dr. Maggie Park, and she was mentioning that there was like 43 minutes taken out, which I thought was crazy because I didn't know that. That's an insane amount of footage to be taken
I
out of the movie.
I still want to go on a journey and discover like where that footage is and recover it. I think
hmm
that would be so interesting. And there must be people who have like seen it, like at some stage of the production who could at least
I would think so.
describe like what was, what was there, what was going to be in the real, full version of the movie. Ah, man.
And of course, the ending definitely, like,
Yeah.
they cut that ending and it ended up being in the video game, which I thought was really interesting.
I've heard that. Yeah, have you played the video game?
No, but I watched YouTube clips of it, just so I could see the final scene that they cut out in the end, which was, of course, Lyra and Roger at Lord Asriel's little cottage.
Yeah.
And are we supposed to talk about this? Spoilers, okay?
No, of course, spoilers are fine. Yeah,
Okay.
don't worry.
But that whole scene about him basically kidnapping Roger away from Lyra was shown in the video game, and I thought that was really interesting considering they cut it away from the movie.
So, do they show it as movie footage in the video?
Yes, they do,
Oh,
which is
wow.
really crazy because the graphics of the game are not that great, but then they show these movie clips in between.
That's so cool. I have to get a copy of the game, if nothing else, just for that. Uh, I heard it's not a great game to play, but I
Mm-mm.
heard it does have some interesting, elements in it. Like they try to do some alethiometer mechanics, and they try to
Mm-hmm.
do some deception mechanics. Also, I heard like you can
Yeah, I
fool
was watching
people.
that.
That sounds so.
It seemed a little bit a little much
Yeah.
for what they were trying to do, but I thought it was a cool idea, just not executed very well.
Yeah, that's tricky. To me, like I'm also more of like a reader and writer, I guess, but I really love playing video games. I love
Mm-hmm.
how they incorporate, graphics and music and of course gameplay, like all of that together with the story, and it's sort of like that's how you tell the story in a way, not so much with words. I find that really interesting, and I would love to see like a well done version of Pullman's work in a game form at some
That'd
point.
be so amazing.
Yeah. So as I've been like rereading the book, I've been trying to like think, imagine what would this look like in a game. And I feel like I've, been doing a really bad job of it because I think my game would just be like a mishmash of a lot of weird, you know, elements. I think it would probably look like whatever the actual game is that they put out, only without the film to at least lift it up a little bit. So I don't know. I might have to go back to the drawing board on this, but yeah. So I wonder like do you have any experience with art or music or programming or anything like that, or do you know of people in the community who are interested in that sort of thing?
um, so I am actually a software developer as my career. And yeah, I know a few people who went into gaming and all that. I've never really asked about the specifics because it's a bit hard enough doing what I do. and learning a whole bunch about that would be a lot. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, the idea of video gaming and everything, because I do play video games, but this one just the one that they made was not very attractive at all. But a beautifully well done version of it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Not so. I'm not very into music or art personally. I mean, I listen to it and I look at it, but I don't do it myself.
It's very
But
that's very well, that's cool though. Like it makes sense that, if you're involved in online communities that about programming, but you do that as a career. That's really that's very interesting. Like, would you ever be interested in making games, or is that
oh,
just too
I
much work?
mean, it. I feel like it'd be a lot of work, but it's also like opportunity, because I'm just starting out in my career. So
Yeah,
I think in the future I'd definitely be interested. Absolutely, like some of my friends have described it as being really fun, but also very intensive. And I'm just like I have to coast my way through this right now, but in the
right.
future maybe. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
that'd be really cool.
that's exciting. Yeah. Well, I'm like I said, I'm like kind of coming up with a lot of ideas, but I don't have any sense of how realistic it would be. The other big thing about it, of course, is getting like, the rights to all the trademarked names and like the story. Obviously, that would be a huge process, like in terms of
Yes.
legality, right? And I guess, with fan fiction, you don't really have to worry about that because you're not trying to make money off it. It's just
Mhm.
like something for fun and for the
Fun.
community. But making a game is like a very expensive project, so
Absolutely.
yeah, it'd be a little different. uh, so it's fun to think about though. um, but yeah, but so I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about the books. So you're currently reading them. Um, you said you don't have a favorite book. Do you have a favorite part or like a favorite, I don't know, aspect of them now as you read them that's maybe different from when you first read them or first encountered them?
Well, actually, as I've been rereading, I've been expanding the articles on Lyra and Will. So I've definitely been taking a more intensive approach. Like I've been going chapter by chapter, adding a bunch of information to their articles, in the attempt to um, fill up the information and make it more accessible. So as I've been rereading, looking more intensely into it, like the character development in particular with Will, like I don't ever remember him being so blunt and like abrasive. But
Yeah,
rereading, like I've been seeing that a lot, like having to look exactly at their character development. I think it's very interesting to see that.
I
He's
so I'm
one of my favorite characters for sure.
Yeah, I'm really curious about Will because he's such a change when you open the second book, right? The
Hmm.
sequel, coming from Northern Lights, and you're like, okay, so
Can I just say,
yeah,
when I opened the subtle knife and saw that it was Will, I got very scared that Lyra was out of the whole series because it started out with him, and I was just like, oh no,
yeah,
where's Lyra?
I know,
But
yeah.
go on.
I remember being so surprised and sort of like bewildered by the way that book so drastically shifts the focus, and I I wonder, I'm curious, I think how, you know, when I reread it this time, how I'm gonna sort of view Will as a character because I have gotten so, into Lyra's whole development, like
Hmm.
her growing, sort of self-awareness. It's so well done in the first book.
Hmm.
So I'm a little nervous, like, uh-oh, am I gonna reread, the second and third book and feel kind of let down actually? I worry about that a little bit because I really loved them as far as like stories, but now that I'm reading them like real analytically and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, but that's heartening though that you had the similar experience and that are sticking with it all the way through the third book. Um, yeah, I know people who say the third book is their least favorite because it's more, I guess, overtly uh, atheistic or sort of anti-religion. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I agree that that's present in all the books. It's
Mhm.
just a little bit more under the radar until you get to the third book.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but yeah, but I guess I still think that Pullman really does a great job of, like showing us how to be good people, basically, um, how to think about things and sort of wonder about things. And I never really get the sense that he is trying to, manipulate the reader or something like that. So I guess I don't mind the third book. At least I don't remember really minding it that much.
I think another reason that a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of the third book is just because it's packing up like the
Yeah.
the build up in the first two books seems so gradual, and then in the third book it all just comes, and like you have to wrap up so many things. And some people I've seen in the fan community, some people have talked about it being a little too much to fit in just one book, and that maybe it should have been split, or that maybe it should have been done a bit differently, is what I've seen.
That makes sense. Yeah, I haven't heard that, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, he does pack a lot in there that, in hindsight, maybe he would have wanted to expand on. And he talks about like, wanting to tell more of the backstory of things sometimes, but always sort of having to restrain himself. And maybe he just didn't restrain himself quite as much in the third book. He put more in there than he usually would. Um, yeah, so I'm really excited for this new book. What do you think he's gonna do with, the remaining couple of books of the Book of Dust?
Well, we know that it's going to have to do with Lyra, of course. And she's going to be around 20 years old, is what he said. And she's going to be traveling the Levant, which I think is like a passage between the Asian area, Western Asia.
Yeah, I think it's an old word basically for what we would call the Middle East. Something like, the eastern side of the Mediterranean, roughly.
Yeah, I think something like that. So that's what we know about it for sure. I don't know if you saw, but he actually read the first paragraph of the um, Secret Commonwealth recently.
Oh, I didn't see that. I saw his excerpt in one of the papers, I think. But so he released the first paragraph too. That's cool. I'm gonna have to look that
Yeah.
up. Um, yeah, like, I mean, what do you think it will sort of be about? Like, what is she doing there?
You know, I thought it was really interesting that in you've read La Belle Sauvage, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
he introduced fairies or fae into
right.
the story, and a giant, I believe, like a river giant. And it's very it's something I personally wasn't such a fan of, just because we went through the whole trilogy and the companion books without any mention of these creatures. So I think it's really interesting that he's um, introducing us to these right now. And so I feel like she's definitely going to encounter more of these creatures and maybe learn a bit more about their culture. Because you know how, like, the ice bears and the witches have such different cultures around them that she
Right.
was learning about through her journey. And I think it's definitely going to have something to do with these new fairies and giants that we've mentioned.
That was my guess too. I suspect that they are um, going to be, yeah, similar to the bears and the witches, sort of like these new lenses for us to sort of think
Mm-hmm.
about, human nature and all that good stuff that he always sort of goes back to, but in a new and imaginative way. Yeah, I'm really excited to
Definitely.
yeah, to find out. Well, also like, doesn't the one fairy have like a a bunch of butterflies as her demon? So the idea like seems to be that they, the witches can separate from their demons, the bears don't have demons, and the fairies have multiple demons or something like that. Like that was really interesting to me. I want to see what he does with that in the new books.
Definitely.
Um, well, cool. I I guess I'll let you go. Thanks again for taking this time to talk and share your expertise about the fandom, and all that. I've really enjoyed the little that I've explored it, and I look forward to kind of digging into it more and hopefully at some point, adding something on there.
No,
So
thank you so much for having me.
yeah.
I
All
feel
right.
very underqualified for all your other guests that you've had.
Yeah, I've been really lucky with I'll tell you though, like you can just sort of send these people emails and they're very gracious in
Hmm.
responding. I think um that there's a lot of scholarly interest out there about, Philip Pullman. Um I know many of them are also fans of the books too. So
Hmm.
that's been kind of one of the things I've really enjoyed about getting to talk to all these different people is like how that seems to kind of um, hang hang steady through all the different differences of opinion and different perspectives. So yeah.
Oh,
Well,
one last thing before you
yeah,
you let me go, if I can. What do you think about the upcoming BBC TV series?
I am really excited about it. I think they are gonna correct some of the things the movie left out or did wrong.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping so.
It seems like also, like you said about the third book, having so much packed in it, it would be impossible in one movie to really
Hmm.
do justice to the story. So I think getting it as a series, you know, and that kind of opens up a lot more that you can do with the story and how you can represent it. So I'm looking forward to it, and I do hope that it brings like a new audience and kind of maybe brings a little more interest to the books themselves because I think
Yeah,
that's the goal ultimately.
you
Um,
mirrored my hopes for it as well. Yeah, I'm
awesome.
definitely hoping that it will turn out well and
Well,
raise our fandom.
when they come out, we'll have to talk again. We'll do a review or something.
That'd be great.
All right.
Well,
Looking
thanks
forward
so
to it.
much.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you again to Leanna, Musical 33 of the His Dark Materials fandom. She's the awesome bureaucrat of the wiki pages there. I hope you go check those out. And I'm back with a few more news items. The Gamecool project, I took some time off a week or so ago to work on an essay submission for a peer-reviewed journal. We'll see how that goes, and I hope it will be accepted, or if not, I can post it somewhere later. Um, I've got a date and time set now for the final Q&A session for this project. That will be Tuesday, April 30th, 7:30 Eastern. If you can't make it live, you can still send in questions and I'll do my best to respond. I'm also going to see about doing a bonus conversation or two. There's authors out there that I contacted who expressed interest but couldn't talk sooner, and so the project itself will probably be wrapped up by the time I get around to interviewing them. But maybe that'll go on a Subtle Knife series in the future. I've also just recently completed a study of Final Fantasy VII in podcast form with Alexander Schmid, hosted on his podcast. We're starting the Majora's Mask sequel to the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the N64. That's our next side quest. And we're hoping to have some contributions from Ben Kozlowski on that as well. Then with Sarah Miller, we have a presentation scheduled at NorwestCon in Seattle over Easter weekend. It'll be on Saturday night. I think it's at 8 p.m. And then, after this month is out and this series of Gamecool books for the Golden Compass is completed, I'll be returning to another video game, Xenogears, for the PlayStation, and hopefully have some related conversations and some creative output for that as well. So I've got a few more song and placeholders for songs. One for the Cliff Ghasts, one for Santelia, something from the Watchtower, and of course, Mortal Kombat. So thanks for listening.